And to start today's program, I would like to welcome Bapak Yanuar Nugroho, Deputy Chief of Staff at the Executive Office of the President, who will deliver his keynote speech. Bapak Yanuar, the stage is yours.
Very good morning, everyone. To be frank, I'm not used to stand here quite far from you. So if you allow me, I would prefer to be here and walk around rather than being there and stand up as a keynote speaker. Because what I would like to share with you is some experience which combines my time during my academic life back in Manchester a few years ago and my current role as government official. If you can help me put my slides. Bisa dibantu, Mas? Earth has to go, who has to travel to find new place to live, right? But let's start with this. Anyone would like to answer? Anyone watch this later? Now, because I'm asked to share with you the context of Indonesia, let me start with this. This is slide, yeah? So, do you know this movie? No? Interstellar. Remember, committee is quite generous to give me quite some time to deliver my remarks, rather than calling it the keynote problem we face in this country. Indonesia at night. See? Sorry, you do not need. Okay. In which clearly sustainable development in that movie didn't work. Didn't work. That human on earth of statistics, just to understand inequality, yeah? I hope this picture is quite clear what inequality is. Share with you experiences of how our work in the academic life can influence policy. You have 2,050 million people living in 17,000 islands, and at night, what you could see is just Java. Sorry if you learn statistics, you spend or you waste your time too much on statistics to understand inequality. But let me be more specific. One story. You know Asmat? Papua, yeah? What happened is in Asmat, when we had the measles outbreak, 75 out of 651 children died. Only end of last year, beginning of this year. It happened in Papua, which in this map, at night, you couldn't see nearly anything. Asmat was not there at night. So, it happens. Asmat. See, if you look at the map, at night there is no Asmat. Let me take you to Lebak. Lebak is not far from Jakarta. It's supposed to be in that map. Lebak is here. Okay? This is Lebak. Not far from Jakarta, not far from the capital city of Indonesia. We found this in Lebak. A religious teacher with 8 children in Lebak. 5 out of 8 malnourished and paralyzed. 3 of these 5 also have TB. They cannot afford food, but can smoke 2 packs a day. Lebak. Supposedly, if you remember the Indonesia at Night, which Han Solo, if he orbits above Indonesia, would see that, should be fine, right, in Java. But the reality is, no. That happens. So when we talk about development, the real change or what development is all about. It is addressing uncertainties. From legal uncertainties, health uncertainty, security uncertainty, you name it. Development is about addressing uncertainty. A government can be said that they are doing development if they address uncertainty. I used to live in the UK for 12 years. Every April, I receive the P12 or P45, I don't remember. Basically, the government reports to me how much tax I have paid. In Indonesia, the other way around. We pay the tax and we report to the country, right? To the government. There, because we pay tax, the government reports to us. The first time my wife and I, we thought, this much money we paid as tax in the UK. But we got certainties. Even from birth, we got our children, both of them were born in the UK, until we moved back to Indonesia. There are certainties in the legal aspects, security, education, etc. Here, in Indonesia, I'm not contrasting because not apple to apple, but the idea of development is about providing certainty to citizens. Then, at the global level, we have this. When I was called back home in 2012, at the time I was asked to join Indonesia's team. I was negotiator for SDGs, negotiator from Indonesia to the UN to negotiate specifically on SDGs. I had to travel 25 times to New York in 2.5 years. We have Mark here, right? From Colombia, from New York. If you have to travel to New York once or twice for holiday, that's nice, right? 25 times in 2.5 years, negotiating SDGs. What we have is those numbers. 17 goals, 169 targets. See? 241 indicators. At national level, we have 319 national indicators. You can read the rest. But development is not about numbers. Contextualization matters. You cannot sell SDGs to an administration with a certain political vision if you cannot convince them. This happens to us. Indonesia as well. The way we can sell, the way we can get buy-in about SDG is when we can convince the administration that it helps them achieve their political vision. On the left, it's national political vision under President Joko Widodo. I still remember my time in the office of the president in the early stage of office of the president. I tried to convince my boss, Pak Luhut, the chief of staff, that SDG was important. And he said, what does it do? Why do I have to care about this? How can this help our president? I nearly failed to convince the importance of SDGs. Until one time, I realized that this is not the way I have to convince them about SDGs. But give them understanding how SDG can help achieving political vision. Because it is not about SDGs. It is about how we can address our national priority. Then we can have this contextualization and alignment to national priorities. We need public participation because the governmental process itself is not enough. You already know this, but let me say it out clear. It is our world that has become very complex. The challenge we have is multidimensional, that I think and I believe it is delusional if you only rely on government alone. No way. The government needs to work together with academics, civil society, media, non-governmental actors, private sectors, you name it. But the main message is that it is now impossible for government alone to solve all of this problem, including carrying out development. There are many jargons, there are many big words in development. Let me give you some examples how we try to give new meaning and new approach on this. The first one takes place in Wonogiri, Central Java. As you can read over there, they disclose the data on the beneficiaries of those receiving subsidized rice, Rastra. If you remember. So, usually, common practice is that the Rastra was just distributed. And there are problems because those who are supposed to receive it don't receive it. Those who are supposed to not receive it, they receive it. Instead, the government, local government, subnational government in Kabupaten Wonogiri put it in open. Pak Slamet eligible, Ibu Wiryanti eligible, Ibu Tini not eligible. They put it. This openness helps the people to help the government correct the data. Let me tell you, Indonesia is one of the founders of Open Government Partnership back in 2011. Open Government Partnership, OGP, now has 80 countries, 80 members, starting from only 8. In 7 years, now we have 80 countries and the number and counting, right? But what openness means in practice, it is not just using technology or high-level technology. These are also technology. Similar to what happened in East Nusa Tenggara. People in Nusa Tenggara, they can contribute in how the government spend their money on health infrastructure. Again, how you give meaning to openness and how you ask and you expect the government to be open in what ways. We transfer around 1 billion rupiah, 100,000 US dollar per year to each village in Indonesia. We have 74,000 villages. Each village receives 100,000 US dollar per year. ₹60 trillion per year. We give it to those villages. Openness needs to work from the bottom. We ask all villages to put openly in a big banner how much they receive the money, from where, how they are used for. So when we talk about openness, when we talk about transparency, when we talk about governance in this new era, well, you cannot ask them to put in Instagram. No. But this kind of technology, I would say, helps a lot of people to make sure that accountability happens. Of course, it is not perfect. You can still find news about corruption at the village level here and there. But in general, I can tell you that it works. So, when the committee asked me, Pak Yanuar, what's government's role in this changing world? Some challenges. One, toxic social norm and values. I know this picture, I hope it speaks for itself. children bullying. These are the problems that our children is facing the most at this time in Indonesia. Bullying happens. It's elephant in the room. Nobody addresses it. Happens in nearly all schools in Indonesia. Early smokers. And it gets younger and younger every time. Second, technology. Most of our kids, most of our children, they spend more time online. Perhaps including you. Perhaps. We have psychologists here, or those having psychology degree. You need to refine Maslow's pyramid. Because the basic needs is not physical, but Wi-Fi and battery. Okay? Even, it happens at a high level. These are 5 most powerful persons in Indonesia. This is my privilege to usually be in the meetings like this, right? So, but it's not just about common family gathering in a restaurant, waiting for meals. They're all busy with their mobile. Even when they wait for the president. So the question is, how much actually technology has influenced our life and what the government should do? Of course, these are anecdotals, but I would like to share with you also good things, hopefully, that we have done with this. For the first time ever, we have now presidential regulation on e-government. For the first time ever. 2 days ago, the president launched one map policy. We are waiting for one data, in which it will help all e-planning, e-budgeting, e-procurement to help the government more efficient. All of us now talk about Industrial Revolution 4.0. Let me tell you the truth. If this is reality, usually academics are lag behind one step, right? Policy lag behind 2 steps. It's my reflection. When I was in Manchester, when we reflect about the reality, we write it, we publish it, the reality has already go further, right? What happens to policy? Even policy has to wait for academics, see? The policy is always lagging behind 2 steps away, 2 steps behind. So it is important for us when we have this platform, we call it Indonesian Digital Platform for Government, to make sure that it helps our government to be more efficient, and when we plan, when we have policy, it is more accurate, evidence-based. The committee gives me 3 questions. First, what can, I cross it, what must we do after learning all the evidence? Breaking the silos. This is what happens in my office. You know, in the bureaucracy, this ministry has a specific task. This ministry has a specific task, you know. So all tasks and responsibilities are distributed. It is good, but it also has dangers because bureaucracy works in silo. They don't speak to each other. We want to have food security. The instruction is given to the Ministry of Public Works to build dams. The instruction is given to the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure that they create new paddy fields. They don't speak to each other. In Aceh, the distance between dams and the paddy field is 60 kilometers. 60 kilometers. How can you expect they can water the paddy field? The water is already gone in 60 kilometers. Silo. In our office of the president, we break the silo. There is no cubicle in which people, each of you, work in your own cubicle outside from outer world. No. We work together. Even the chief of staff himself. Instead of reporting to him in his office, we ask him to come to our office and we present him. Pak, this is the problem we have. So this kind of meeting is very often. In my office, in my department, Deputy 2 of Executive of the President, we alone deal with 66 issues with only 20 people. Can you imagine if we work in silo? Second, this is your second question. Can policymaking learn from failures and expand from successes? Yes. But there is a lot of work to do. I will start with the failures. In the first and second year of Village Fund, it was failed. Village Fund did not help addressing inequality. Instead, it worsens inequality. Look at that number. Compare Village Birang and Senaru. Asymmetry allocation. Compare Sungai Enau and Losari. Only with this evidence, we learn. If we continue the way we did, it would fail. So we had a national revamping of Village Fund in the end of 2016. Now, the allocation is much better. But we need evidence. Because, the policy is made in Jakarta. Remember that map, Indonesia at night? Not made in those remote areas. When we go to those remote areas, that's the problem. Same questions. Success? Yes. Now I start from the success. I started from the failures, now some success stories. From PNPM, National Program for Society of People's Empowerment, now it has escalated into the Village Fund program. We have also this, conditional cash transfer into the so-called program Keluarga Harapan. Subsidized rice into non-cash food subsidy. Are they fully success? Are they fully delivering what it promised? We are going there, but not yet 100%. There are plenty of things to do, still. But yes, we can learn. Third question, rather difficult. Can governments get things done differently for the best interest of children? Yes, it needs hard work and commitment and ability to see the future. Because when we talk about children, it is not about now. It is about the future. For example, spending in education. We allocate 20% of our state budget, around 400 to 500 trillion rupiah for education. Although this is painful, but we had at the time to report this to the president. Because after we review this, central government actually is unable to evaluate the outcome of transferred fund to local governments, whereby the share of such fund is approximately 60% of total education budget. So out of those 400 trillion rupiah, 60% are transferred to the subnational government. And we cannot evaluate them. After we did this, we found this evidence. So if the question is about the best interest of our children, education and health would be key. Now we are correcting this. This year, and actually starting from last year, it's now a bit better. Second, universal health coverage. It is a long and winding road, of course. But now I think we are going there. Of course, there are dynamics, there are conflicts here and there are problems, how we manage our national health insurance here and there, of course. But the vision is there. We are going to universal health coverage. At the moment, 200 million Indonesians are already enrolled in the national health insurance. Central and local governments, how they spend money. Learning from that education spending. Now we want to make sure that I take this Dana Desa Village Fund as an example. We must make sure the use of state budget, subnational budget, down to village budget have to be synchronized. Have to be synchronized to answer the problems. Previously, they got their own ways. This is my last slide. So when we talk about development, you know this picture, right? I'm not talking about the last one. It's not on earth. It's when you're already in heaven, if it exists, okay? But I will talk about these two stark difference in development paradigms. On the left, it's about doing development equally. Dalam bahasa Indonesia, kesetaraan. Okay? Let me take, again, rural development as an example. Okay? If you give subsidy to the fertilizer plant or fertilizer industry, you did the first one. Because all farmers can enjoy the cheap price of fertilizers. Whether they are big farmers, middle farmers, or small farmers. In the middle, it is doing development equitably. Dalam bahasa Indonesia, keadilan. You remove the subsidy from fertilizers industry. You give it directly to the farmers through farmers' card insurance. If they are big farmers, they don't receive at all. If they are middle farmers, they receive some part of it. If they are small farmers, they receive most of them. Don't you think these two paradigms can have strong, big, huge, even political implications to the government? They do. It depends on your standpoint, where you want to stand with. The government of Indonesia at the moment chooses to take the second one. Equitable development, pembangunan berkeadilan. This is why it is not, you remember the first picture, the pic that I show you about Indonesia? That's Java-centric. That is why we try, if you ask how to govern in a changing world, we want to make sure that everyone has access to development outcomes. I hope my sharing is useful. I don't know whether I still have time, but if you want to ask, if still possible, one or two comments or questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much. Ada pertanyaan? Question? Do we still have time? Okay. One. How many of you would like to ask? One here. Because there's no moderator, I will also act as moderator. One? Only one? Sure.
Earlier on, you mentioned the need to include all parties, the government, the public participation, the public sector, NGOs, everybody. How do you incentivize or encourage the public sector to contribute to this cause?
You mean public sector or private sector?
Oh, sorry, private sector.
Private sector. Any other questions in this sense? Yes, Professor.
Thank you. It's very inspiring, and you said that the universal health coverage in Indonesia has covered 200 million Indonesians, which means that 500 million are still out of it.
Yes.
Although it's not a long time that you started it, so you have done very well. But what your plans are for the remaining 500 million?
Okay.
Yes. And who are they actually?
Okay. Thank you. So two different questions. Let me address the first one and then the second one, Professor. Anyone? Any other? Okay. Mas, sebelah sini, Mas. Yep. Okay, I will take 3 first and then see how we manage the time.
Thank you. I just want to ask, how do you address the development sector to take into account for cultural and social norms for the society? Because when you develop infrastructure, for example, for Papua, some of the community also think that it's not their priority to open their land and also develop the modern sector of the market,
Okay.
for example. Thank you.
I will try to answer. First, incentivizing private sectors. I think, let me start with the logic of how private sector can work together with the government. Because these two sectors, public sector and private sector, I think have different logics, different, I would say, governing mechanisms. The first one aims, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, no, but just simply the fact. The first one is driven by profit motives. The second one is driven by, if not power, it's about governance motives. Now, I think if we invite private sector, or how we invite private sector into the development, usually we come up with what would help them in the long run. Let me give you one example, one map, or one map policy that was just launched a few days ago. We have big industry, palm oil, mining, and we know that these sectors are very, I would say, not problematic, but contentious perhaps, because you can see clearly the conflicts between those working in the industry and those working in the protection of environment. What happened before was just, I would say, rumor that there are conflict of land use without data. Now with this one map policy, we completed mapping in Kalimantan with 80 thematic maps. Now we have the data. It is not just rumor, it is not just conflict, which was addressed but never, which was said but never addressed by the government, but also for the private sector, they face uncertainties and they disincentivize, it gives them disincentive to do right things. Now with the one map, it is clear which land, what land status, what you can do over there, and what kind of business you can do there. We have online single submission. We have the regulation for the moratorium of palm oil. So it is basically holding or preventing more deforestation. Because the idea is increasing productivity. This is one way to get the private sector joining public sector in development. If this example is too far, let me get you to the other example, perhaps in health sector a bit. A good policy in national health insurance will help not just health industry, but also pharmaceutical industry. Because in the past, for example, and it happened not long ago, the pharmaceutical companies, they came to our office and complained. Because of the late payment of the BPJS, the National Agency for Health Insurance, they owed the pharmaceutical industry 3.5 trillion rupiah, and they could not operate. And they said, Pak, we may have a medicine crisis because we cannot produce, because we are not paid. If we have better system, it will help them do their business in a more certain ways and help them invest. I think this is the way. I think if the government does their homework, we do it well, it will help other sectors to also be able to join, to work together to improve. It also happens, and it also applies for civil society. I think most of you here, or perhaps, and also academics, the government cannot do it alone. Of course, for academics, anything can be research topic, of course. But for civil society, working with the government, they want to see change. I think we can discuss more on this, but my bottom line is that if we do, I would say, development, if the government just do their job rightly, in the right way, I think it already provides some firm ground for anyone to join. That's one. Second, professors, on the universal health coverage. We have 250 million. So now remaining 50 million. Let me dig down into this 200 million. From 200 million, 92 million are paid by the government. They are the bottom 20%. So the rest, they pay for themselves. And I believe most of us Indonesians here in the room, we pay the insurance, we pay the premium for them. Who are those 50 million? Mostly from informal sectors. Because they are not working for someone else who usually cover their health insurance, they do not think that it is important for them to pay. This is the problem that we have in the national health insurance system in Indonesia at the moment. When you're healthy, you do not join the insurance. Then, or you feel healthy, you go to, then suddenly you feel something is not right with your body, you go to PUSKAPA, primary health care. And the doctor, "Pa, I think you need to do medical checkup." And then it's found out that you have one NCD, let's say heart disease. Then you join the insurance, see? And then you take the benefit a month later or a few weeks later. This, a healthy health insurance would be, if you have 10, 8 healthy to 6. What happens is that with this kind of practice, you have more people who are unhealthy rather than those who are healthy. So we are now trying to, on the one hand, we realize that universal health coverage, if we want to go there, our state budget of 5% of state budget is still not enough. So we are working on that, we are advocating that. But also we need to make sure that the supply side is improved. This is the work of the government. But from the demand side, we try to encourage people to join the health insurance. And especially for those who are in the informal sector, we are now discussing how the best way we can involve them to the health sector, to the insurance. Lastly, on your question on apa tadi, Mas? Social norm and culture. Any of you, I believe all of you use emails, right? All of you. You have emails address? Okay. How many of you, after sending an email, you call him or her, you send email? Hey, I just sent you an email. Have you received it? And then, no, I haven't read it. What's it all about? And then you explain what you emailed. Okay. Polanyi would call this disembeddedness. Meaning, the way we behave, taste including, preference including, usually disconnected from the reality which moves much faster, especially when it comes into technology and whatever connected to technology. In Indonesian, we call it norak. I don't know in English. Okay, you can afford something, but you do not act, you do not behave according to what that something perhaps wants you to do or expect you to do. You can afford Ferrari or you can afford those expensive cars, but then you park everywhere, or you put, those speakers so loud that everyone can see, cannot understand whether it's a car or it's a music room, or going in the roads. My point is that we are now consuming more rather than producing. It affects the way we interact. Not just because you can afford smartphone. It means you are smart, or it makes you smart. No. It is about the way of living. It is about the way of interacting. And I think this is where we need to make sure that our children have the best environment, enabling condition in the future. Because when you talk about culture, I put there bullying, one of the biggest problem. I put there and the importance of tobacco control, because smoking, early smokers are the, I would say, biggest problem now in Indonesia. And protection of, from violence, of course. The society which moves very fast, this technology which moves very fast, the winner are those who are faster. And if you still remember the map that I presented you in the beginning, those who are slower, those who are less capable in catching up will be left behind. And those include the vulnerables, children included. Do not think that when you give gadget to your kids, 5 years, now I see myself, I witness myself, children aging, I think, 3 to 5 years, they have their own gadget. Do not think that it helps them integrate to the society. Do not think that it helps them address the problems that we have today in a deeper way. No. Instead, you alienate them. You alienate them from the reality. You alienate them from what happens in the society. Of course, there is debate here, but the reality now is society with technology. My point is, what we understand as culture are very much now being shaped and reshaped continuously in a very, very fast way. Both by technology, by economy, even now in Indonesia, perhaps politics, that perhaps we are lost if we do not re-establish the connection. We do not give meaning again to what social interaction is all about. So I think while we talk about the technology, children and technology, your topic today here, but remember that technology is not an end in itself. It is never an end in itself. A good use of technology requires more thinking, deeper understanding what technology can do to you, but also how you can use the technology. I hope this makes sense. I'm sorry if it doesn't, but I really wish you to enjoy the rest of the conference today and tomorrow. Thank you very much.